Heard a big boom and a thud, and we just said, that's not right.
We're learning more tonight about a small plane that crashed in Steamboat Springs, killing 2 people on board. The NTSB investigation continues tonight, and the crash site will be closed for days.
9 News reporter Lawrence Kafidi is along now with details. And Lauren, what new did we learn today?
Today we learned that the people in that plane were 67-year-old Dan Dunn and 42-year-old Jessica Melton. They're both from the Front Range area. Their plane took off from Longmont yesterday, headed for Ogden, Utah, before crashing into a mobile home park in Steamboat Springs. This is the 3rd small plane crash in Colorado so far this month. Our 9 News aviation expert, Greg Feith, says Colorado has 2 things working against them when it comes to flying. That's high altitude and high temperature. That affects how well a plane flies. Feith says performance does suffer this time of year, no matter what kind of plane it is. He says you also have to consider the number of pilots up in the air, because Colorado has about the 4th most pilots in the air compared to other states, which naturally means more accidents. He said it's kind of like driving a car on the freeway.
It's kind of like having 5 car accidents on I-70. The result was the same. Yeah, you had 5 car accidents, but the initiating factors were all different. And that's why it's so important that we ferret out or investigate these accidents to try and determine not only the cause, but the lessons learned.
And this was interesting. He adds the high altitude and high pressure are why runways at DIA are so long. It's because it's harder for any plane to get off the ground when it's 100 degrees out compared to maybe 30 degrees. He says pilots need to be prepared for the unexpected and know the best spot to put down the plane if needed. In the studio, Lawrence Kafidi, 9 News.
Tonight, at least 1 person is dead after 2 wildfires moved quickly through New Mexico, roughly 200 miles southeast of Albuquerque. The South Fork Fire and Salt Fire have damaged more than 500 buildings. We don't know how many among that number are homes. The 2 fires forced the evacuation of the entire village of Reducio, where 7,000 people live. Tonight, they're burning uncontained. Forecasters say high winds, high temps, low humidity are fueling those fires.
Chris Bianchi, a lot of those characteristics have been with us for at least part of this week.
Yes, we've certainly had some of that. Fortunately today, much cooler. We get that cooler weather for one more day tomorrow before we go back to this heat. But in the meantime, we're just talking about that wildfire in New Mexico and Ruidoso. For a bit of context, a little spot there west of Roswell, southeast of Albuquerque. That would be the South Fork fires, and that smoke, unfortunately, is going to reach us here in Colorado as we get later on through the week. Specifically, it looks like Thursday we'll see some of that smoke reach us here in Colorado. May have some more bits of that smoke later on through the weekend and to next week as well. Meantime, we are seeing a few showers out there. Most of those are north of Denver, but not seeing a ton of impact from these. These are generally lighter showers. Could still see some showers across southeast Colorado later on tonight. In the Denver area, we likely wake up to some clouds, maybe a shower or storm as we get into tomorrow. And it's cool for now, but we get that heat back up into the back up later on to the week and to next week. All details on that, and also a look at hopefully some meaningful rain for tomorrow. All that coming up at my full forecast in a couple minutes.
The family of a man who was killed in a crash involving a semi-truck on Highway 285 says he died just 6 miles from home. Scott Miller's wife and daughter went to court today. They asked a judge not to reduce Ignacio Cruz Mendoza's bond. Investigators say the 47-year-old operated a big rig without a proper commercial driver's license. He lost control last week in the semi-crash, dumping its load onto the road. 1 person was hurt, and Scott Miller was killed. He was headed home from the grocery store. Miller was a truck driver himself. His family was frustrated to learn the trucking company involved in the crash has a history of violations. 2 years ago, inspectors found on at least 2 occasions that drivers didn't have the proper license.
If his death is going to mean anything, it's going to mean that people are more aware and that truckers as a profession are more careful.
He was one of the safest drivers on the road, and it's so ironic that he was taken out by a road driver.
Cruz Mendoza was formally charged with 4 misdemeanors today. Prosecutors could file more charges after CSP finishes its investigation. A judge did not reduce his bond. It remains at $50,000.
The person who shot and killed 5 people at an LGBTQ nightclub in the Springs in 2022 pleaded guilty today to 50 federal hate crime charges. Shooter is already serving a life sentence after pleading guilty last June to murder at the state level. That night, Ashley Paul, Daniel Aston, Derek Rump, Kelly Loving, and Raymond Green Vance died in the shooting. 17 other people were hurt. The shooter entered a plea deal with federal prosecutors to avoid the federal death penalty. Survivors spoke today outside that hearing.
That not only did he, the shooter, impact all of our lives, he reversed his own life with going from total freedom to absolute confinement, and that's where he belongs and that's where he will stay.
The shooter was sentenced today under the Hate Crimes Prevention Act, which expanded federal law 15 years ago to include crimes motivated by sexual orientation, gender identity, and disability.
The Colorado Supreme Court is considering whether a Christian baker can legally refuse to make a cake celebrating a gender transition. Jack Phillips is the owner of Masterpiece Cake Shop in Lakewood. He initially agreed to make a cake for Autumn Scardina and then refused after Scardina explained she was going to use it to celebrate her transition. The Colorado Court of Appeals sided with Scardina, ruling that the pink and blue cake, on which Scardina did not request any writing, was not speech protected by First Amendment. It's not clear when we'll get a ruling from the Colorado Supreme Court. In another case, you might remember, Phillips scored a partial victory before the U.S. Supreme Court in 2018 after refusing to bake a cake for a gay couple's wedding.
Another investigation has been opened into John Tite Porter's betting scandal, this time in Canada. They're looking into online betting irregularities from 2 games involving the former Toronto Raptor, the brother of Nuggets star Michael Porter Jr. U.S. prosecutors in New York have charged 4 other people with wire fraud in connection to prop bets placed on Porter's stats during those games. Among the largest, an $80,000 parlay that would have paid out $1.1 million. Porter himself has not been charged. Baseball legend and Hall of Famer Willie Mays has died. Giant center fielder with his signature basket catch, one of the game's greats, and one of the most beloved figures in the game as well. He hit more than 600 home runs, 3,000 hits in a 23-season career. He's a 2-time MVP with 12 Gold Gloves. Willie Mays was 93.